So the itch has been growing for me over the last few months around second bike. So I absolutely love this bike, and I'm not gonna sell it. This is my Harley Sportster 48. I've frankly just put blood, sweat and tears and too much work into it to get rid of it now. But I do really like the idea of a second bike, and practicality wise that is going to be a bit of a challenge because I have virtually no space. I thought I'd share with you some of my thoughts around what second bike options I might go for. I'm going to try and get some test rides in over the next few weeks, which I'll share the options that I'm looking at so that I can share the experience of those bikes with you. This is my list and my thoughts on what's next. Okay, so where to start? Well, I love this bike, Harley Sportster 48, and I don't have any intention of selling that, point number one. But I think probably getting a second bike is a really good opportunity to try and get something a little bit different, something that's going to give me a different riding experience. So I guess my criteria for when I come to select bikes is kind of a four-prong. So I'm looking at performance, style, practicality and cost. I really like the idea of sports bikes in theory. My last video was around actually the differences between a sports bike and a Sportster and the kind of things and riding experiences that you can expect. So if you haven't seen that, check out the last video. I'll put a link in the description. The problem I've got with a sports bike is that I think it's just a bit too polished, and I would rather go for something that's going to be a little bit of maybe a project or something with a bit more character. So the first thing that I've been looking at is a Triumph Thruxton R. I really like the idea of Triumph because it's a British bike, and I think there's something quite cool about owning a bike or a vehicle from the country that you're from. And I kind of like, I just like the styling of it, and it's kind of got that nice balance between sporty, sports bike-ness, but also that kind of retro styling, and it is a quick bike as well by all accounts. So I think a Triumph Thruxton R is definitely going to be one of the bikes that I'm going to put on the list. The other nice thing with those Triumphs is there's a lot you can customise to it, and for those of you that are regulars on my channel, you know that I kind of like to tinker, to make some modifications and make the bike my own, and I think the Triumph Thruxton R would give me that. I actually wouldn't rule out the standard Triumph Thruxton either. I mean, the R's got some of the nice little treats on it, like I think it's got the Olean shocks, uprated brakes. I'm not sure whether the engine is actually tuned to a higher spec or not. I'll need to do the research on that. But there's no doubt that you get some goodies on the R that you don't get on the standard, but of course you pay the premium for that. Alrighty, so the next option is one that I've kind of pined after this for quite some time, and I follow a lot of people, both YouTube channels, Instagram, that kind of thing, of people that do this, and that is a cafe racer build. There's just something really appealing about that. I think it's that, again, ability to make it your own, create your own kind of bike, and transform something that, you know, is pretty mundane into something that's really quite exciting and unique. So I've spent quite a bit of time looking at some donor bikes, things like your classics, so your Honda CB, either the 500, the 750, there's the Yamaha XV 750s, which, you know, again, I think perhaps a little bit more challenging on the cafe racer build style, but they look fantastic when they're done properly. And I'll perhaps whack up a few pictures of some goodies I've seen on Instagram, which I particularly like. And there's other things as well, like, you know, the Suzuki GS, the 550, etc., which seem to be really good donor bikes. You can do a lot with it. So I guess there are a few things with cafe racers. At the moment, they're incredibly expensive to buy the donor bikes. I think that the whole kind of popularity of that scene has just pushed the prices up and up and up, and obviously the number of donor bikes available, particularly nice ones, seems to then go down. So a good donor bike, I mean, you could really be paying anything up to, you know, 2.5 to 4,000 plus, really, which is a huge amount of money before you've even started the project. And of course the second piece with Cafe Racer Build is, you know, it's one thing putting a few modifications on the Harley. I think it would be a step up for me, and I'd probably need a workshop to do it properly. Right, let's see who can win in this little acceleration race. The Triumph's got it. The next bike is a weird one, and it's probably going to be a massive deviation from the kind of standard style that I like. And this one is really about fulfilling a childhood dream for me. I guess, you know, when I was 16, 17, pining after 125s and two strokes were still around, I just loved the Aprilia RS125. But the kind of creme de la creme was the Aprilia RS250 with the twin cans, and I've never actually been able to ride one, and I just love the sound, the smell, the whole two-stroke thing. I just would love to have a go on one of those, and they're becoming really collectible now, and the prices have just soared on them. So it's really quite different from, I mean, clearly I don't think you can get any more different than a Aprilia RS250 and this Harley, but there is something really nice about that, and I kind of feel like, I mean, I think in the last few years they've gone up in price from a couple of grand to five and a half grand for a good condition one. I want to get one before they just become too expensive and too collectible.
I think one of my criteria for next bike should definitely be a bigger fuel tank.
So the fourth option I'm looking at as a potential second bike is actually going back to Triumph with the Triumph Bobber. Now, I have to be honest, when this bike first was revealed, I was a bit against it, and I think the reason for that is I felt like a custom bike should be exactly that, custom, and if it's created out the box from factory, it kind of defeats the purpose of it and the passion that you can put into making that bike your own. But I've seen the bike in the flesh in the last week, and my opinion has changed, because I could see the potential to take it further. So while they've started the journey of moving it towards a custom bike, it's still very much a blank canvas that you can use to kind of build your version of what you want that bobber to look like. Now, some people might say that it's similar to this bike, and I wouldn't disagree in some respects, in the sense that it's maybe a retro looking bike, but the philosophies of Triumph and Harley Davidson are very different. The way the engines run and are built and tuned are very different, and of course it's a British bike again, so I think a bobber would absolutely be a bike that I would love to take on a test ride, see how it performs, and it could be a really viable second option for me. Well guys, there we go, that's my list of 4 bikes or types of bikes that I'm looking at as a second option. You can probably kind of see the thread of style and theme that I'm looking at, perhaps with the exception of that Aprilia. And I'd love to know what you think. Have you had the opportunity to ride any of those bikes? Do you own them? What do you think of them? Are they good options? And if you've had the pleasure of riding the Harley Sportster as well as one of those, I'd in particular like to know how you think it compares. So over the next few weeks, months, I'm going to be scheduling test rides on the bikes that I've mentioned, so that I can do a video review and see whether they turn out to be as good as I hope they are, and maybe even look at buying one. So if you're interested in that, hit the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner, and we'll see you soon.